Hello and welcome to another episode of The Tigers Down Under. We're the official Hull City Australia podcast down here in Australia. I'm your host as always, Alex, and with me today I've got Logan.
G'day.
And I've also got Mitch.
Hey everyone.
It's been a bit of a mixed bag since our last podcast with results. We've had a few ups and downs, but at least a bit better than last time out, where I think we were reviewing pretty much mainly draws and losses. So good to get back on the winning trail with a couple of wins. And we'll start with the Bristol City game, where we bounced back in quite some style after the international break with a 4-0 win. And I'll start with you, Logan, but I know last time we were chatting about the importance of bouncing back strongly after the international break, and we certainly did that.
Oh, exactly. We came back into that the game against Bristol, and you could just see from the kickoff. Actually, I think Bristol had a few early chances, but then it was all City, and we certainly didn't take a backward step. We looked confident with the ball, and yeah, obviously took the most of our opportunities, which was positive. And finally seeing a scoreline that got outside the 1 or 2 goals was great for the confidence, I guess.
And I think there'd been a bit of a talk about the fact that Dawson and Davies had only combined for 2 goals between them for the season so far. So it was great to see Davies get the first goal for us, especially since it came from a corner, which we've also struggled to score from lately. Mitch, how have you seen the centre-backs this season, and do you think we should be expecting a couple more goals from them?
Well, defensively, they've done their job. They've been good for the most part. But I think I remember 2 seasons ago, the year we went in the FA Cup final, Davies was scoring. I think he scored 3 or 4 games in a row or something like that.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That helped get us a lot of points. And so, I mean, I know it's not their job to score. Like, their job's obviously to defend. But I think they should probably be chipping in a couple more each. But, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Dawson obviously scored in the game against Liverpool last season, which gave us a bit of a flicker of hope for staying up. And as you say, Davies, I think it was the FA Cup game against Sunderland, and he scored against Newcastle, he scored against Sunderland, and I think he scored against someone else. And it was, about 3 or 4 games in a row. But it was good to see also Aluko back on the score sheet. So Logan, Aluko's been sort of in and out of the side lately, but he's starting to show a bit of decent form, and he's scored against... was it Forest, and now he scored against Bristol, so it's a couple of good games for him now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the criticism of Aluko is always the end product. I don't think you ever doubt him with the ball. He's he's very skillful and does some pretty impressive stuff at times. But yeah, you just wonder if if he sorted out his shooting, his goal return would obviously be a lot higher, and that would be something that it really separates Aluko from being a bench player or starting.
Well, that was the question I wanted to ask you guys with Aluko. Do you see him as a player that actually, in some ways, coming off the bench benefits him? Because he's got that pace and he's got the skills to unlock a slightly tired defence, that it might actually suit him coming off the bench.
Yeah, definitely. He does. He's certainly never going to have the goal return that the Army and Hernandez will give us. At least I don't think so. But when he does come on for those patches in the last 20 minutes or so, he definitely does give us a spark, particularly if it looks like there's not a lot happening.
What are your thoughts on it, Mitch?
Yeah, I agree completely. I do it on FIFA too. I leave him on the bench and bring him on in the 70th minute, because everyone should be tired by then, and his pace and his skill should be able to do them all. And if he had that end product, it'd be very good. But yeah.
Now, the one thing that we have to say about the Bristol City game is that they did come to play against us, and they obviously had the confidence because they'd won last time out 6-0. And you could really see that kind of left a bit of space and let us actually exploit that, and it helped us get those goals. Obviously, not all sides are going to come to the KC and play to win and attack us, and we've seen that with other games earlier against Brighton, against Sheffield Wednesday, and so on. Is it still an issue that the side doesn't seem to be able to break down sides that have set up defensively against us, Mitch?
I think so. I think the game before that, the MK Dons game. Was that the one before?
I think it was. It might have been the MK Dons, or someone like that, or Forest.
Okay. Well, yeah, the MK Dons game is a perfect example of it. How we just couldn't. I mean, we got a goal, but we should have put them away, but we couldn't. And I think that's what we can expect with lower table opponents all for the rest of the season. So none of them are really going to expect to win unless like maybe Rotherham, depending on their table position when we play them, they'll might need a win. But apart from that, I can't see anyone really trying to get all three from us, especially at the KC.
And the other thing of concern is we had 22 shots, but only 6 of them were on target. And I know I think I saw a stat a few weeks ago that we were the actual, I think we're the leaders in the division for shots in matches, but clearly our goal return isn't matching that. Logan, is it a bit of a concern that we're not getting more on target? And we'll talk about the Wolves game in a little bit, but it was a similar story against them.
Yeah, certainly. I feel that a lot of responsibility with that does lie with the midfield. I'd expect that Livermore and Huddleston, particularly on David Myler when he's played, our central midfielders should be the ones with that quality to kind of unlock the defences. I feel like a lot of our shots seem to be coming from nothing. I know Rob Snodgrass was guilty of a couple against in the Borough game where he kind of looked up and just thought, oh, I'm just going to have a shot without really... it was very ambitious efforts, and he sort of did 2 or 3, and you could see him throwing his head back. And there's just a frustration that when we do take too long to unlock the defences, it's almost like we don't have. There's not really anyone with that poise to kind of sit and wait on the ball and really give that killer pass. And I was really hopeful that Nick Power was going to come in and offer that. And he showed promise early, but since then we know that Power's obviously injured, and it sort of just looks like it's coming from nothing. So a lot of our shooting, I put down to, yes, we are having shots, but whether they're good opportunities, I'm not so sure.
Sadly, also with Powell, it looks like he might be out for the season. I think Bruce said that he injured his calf again in training. Whether that means he might be back for the playoffs, I'm not so sure, but I guess we'll see. The next game to discuss is one that there's not much to say about in the way of positives, but the Derby County game. Biggest loss under Bruce in the league, 4-0 loss, red card for Odebajo after about 55 minutes, a mistake from Davies for their opening goal. What's there to say? Mitch, I'll start with you.
Well, yeah, what is there to say? It was shocking, awful. Like, to come off a 4-0 win, I thought we could be seeing the hole that we saw in November where we just couldn't stop winning games, but then we come out and the same scoreline just on the other end of it wasn't good, and I didn't really expect it. I don't think any of us really expected to be smashed like that. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was just awful.
And Logan?
Yeah, if ever there was a result to signify that we're in somewhat of a crisis, that was it. And yeah, from start to finish, you never really had the feeling we weren't in the game. Derby turned up to play, and yeah, I think it's just one of those ones you've got to let slide and move on, because yeah, there's not really much. There's no positives you can take out of it.
I guess the one talking point I wanted to bring up from this game is the fact that Bruce's comment that the Odebajo red turned the game in their favour was an interesting one. At that point, I think we were already 2-0 down, and it's an interesting one because we've conceded the first goal on a number of occasions, and there's only been one time that we've actually won the match from that position, and that was against Reading back in, I think it was in December. Is there an issue with the side that I think I saw the comment made that when we go up 1-0, as we did against Bristol City, for instance, we generally go on and win the game quite confidently. But if we concede the first goal, our heads seem to drop and we just don't seem to find a way back into the game. Is that a really concerning issue for the rest of the season?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's been a consistent thing with Hull for quite some time now. Not just in the championship years, but if we score first, we are a much better side. If we concede, we just hardly ever look like getting back into the game. And yeah, that's certainly an issue and a matter of concern.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Whenever they score first, I drop my head too, because I know we're probably not going to come back and offer a lot in it. And if we can nick a draw, it's normally a good result when we're down. Like, I remember the Fulham game where it was 2, or I think either Long got 2 or Jelavic and Long got 1. But
yeah,
I forget. But,
I think we're 2-0 down.
We all celebrated we celebrated that like a win. Like it was so. Even though we beat them 6-0 earlier in the season, that was phenomenal. So for us to come back, it's a pretty big thing, especially to take all 3.
Well, speaking of games where we managed to come back, it does segue very nicely into the next one, which is Huddersfield, where we did in fact do that, where Huddersfield got the first goal while we were playing a 3-5-2 formation that clearly didn't seem to be working. and an unfortunate Dawson injury forced us to move. Well, not didn't force us. Bruce could have brought Davies on, but we moved back to a 4-4-2 formation. Looked a bit better, and we did manage to get back into the game with late goals from Hernandez and Diomande. And I do want to start by touching on Diomande and his season for us. It's obviously been an unfortunate start to his career at the club, with the groin injury ruling him out for so long. But he's been a bit lucky with a couple of the goals he's scored, but he's managed to score goals, which is always a good thing. And what do we make of him, and what part he can play for the rest of the season, Mitch?
Well, the fact that he's got the goals in the last two, it should give him confidence, especially coming into the playoffs. And now he's only start as well, even more confidence. And I think you need the luck sometimes. Like, you need to create goals for yourself as well, but the luck can really help, especially a striker. So the QPR one was pure luck, and the one just scoring against Wolves, that was, payback for McGregor's earlier one. But I think he needs that, and I think if he's got the confidence to do it, he'll be able to.
What are your thoughts on him, Logan?
Yeah, sadly, I'm not too convinced. I think that Diomande was somewhat of a panic buy, because at the time, I remember a lot of fans were calling for we needed to add a striker, as we do basically every transfer window. And I think that probably led to Bruce trying to uncover Diomande, but I'm not so sure he was the right purchase at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to be positive about him when we first signed him, because he had such a fantastic scoring record in Norway. And even though it's in a Norwegian league, which might arguably be a lower quality than the Championship, you have to hope that the player's coming across with some confidence, and he knows where the goals are, so he can hopefully score a few goals. But then obviously the injury, and then the way he's sort of struggled to get into the side, hasn't really filled me with much confidence. But who knows? I mean, he scored the very, very late equaliser against Huddersfield, and then managed to get the first goal against Wolves. So hopefully he's full of a bit of confidence, and he's earned his starting spot, and hopefully he can stay there. As a final point on the Huddersfield game, we've now gone 14 away games without a goal in the first half, which is a pretty damning stat when you consider that's essentially 7 complete away games without a goal. Our away goals tally is one of the lowest in the league. I think it's only the relegated teams, or the teams in the relegation places, who actually have a lower tally for away goals. Is that something? Well, it's obviously quite a concerning thing. How do we go about rectifying that ahead of playoffs, where we'll have to play away from home?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, and it's certainly one that I don't think I have an answer for. I'm going to be very interested to see what Steve Bruce does. But I mean, the 3-5-2 formation was something that I always liked when we did play it, particularly last season, or the last Championship season rather. And I would actually like to see a return to that away from home. But bringing Alex Bruce in, particularly with Dawson injured, I think could be the right move. And I probably think that if we are looking for ways to find those early goals, then maybe that would be worth a punt.
Yeah, I'm not sure Alex Bruce is the goal-scoring man, but I think I don't know. That's like 10.5 hours without a first half goal or something like that, which is ridiculous. As Logan said, I don't know what the answer is, but we do need to find it, especially coming into playoffs, and because as you said, we'll have to play away, and Wembley is technically not home, so even if we make the final, we'll be in trouble there too.
Absolutely. And so the final game to touch on is the Wolves game, which is just passed, and thankfully it was a televised game, so we got to enjoy that one. Diomande got the goal after about 5 minutes, and as you say, it was a bit of payback for the McGregor drop in the reverse fixture. Their keeper with a bit of a calamitous error for that one, and Diomande in the right place. And credit does have to go to him. As much as it was luck, he was in the right place to capitalise on that, so it was good to see. Again, only 3 shots on target for the entire game, with 2 of them after the 80th minute. One of them, I think, was actually, as you say, one of those sort of long-range hopeful shots from Hernandez, so it didn't really amount to much. But then what a goal to win the game on. Snodgrass with an absolutely beautiful free kick. What were your thoughts on that one, Logan?
Again, I think we spoke last podcast about the lack of free kicks we've seen go in recent times. So I mean, I nearly passed out when I saw that in injury time. It's certainly something that we're not used to being spoiled with at Hull. So, fair play. I thought it was a dire game. We really, really underperformed. Didn't really look that great a side at all. The Diamande goal was pure luck. I think Snodgrass scoring that goal has definitely put a band-aid on the wound at the moment that is very obviously there.
Do you think that with those two late goals now, the Diamande goal against Huddersfield and now the Snodgrass goal against Wolves, that the side might start to get a bit of its old confidence back?
Look, we can only hope. I mean, two injury time goals in consecutive games is always going to be good for the confidence heading late into games. But like you said, I think the issues go a lot deeper than that. We haven't been able to score in the first half in away games. There's a lot to ponder at the moment. Hopefully it does give us that confidence spark, but I'm not so sure it will.
Mitch, what were your thoughts on the game?
I was starting to feel like Burrow a bit, scoring all these late goals. But, as Logan said, it wasn't super impressive. I like that metaphor of the Band-Aid one. That was good. I don't know what to take from that. I fell off my chair, that Snodgrass goal. That was something. It was a bit cool they took it off him. Did they take it off him in the end? Give it an own goal?
I think they have. It technically is because I think because he hit the post. He couldn't have been more top corner if he tried because he pretty much literally hits at top corner. But I think the ball is starting to bounce out and then deflects back in off the keeper's back. So, look, yeah. I understand that it is an own goal by the definition of how they classify that. But I still feel like you should give it to Snodgrass for the effort and for the technique.
Yeah, it's cool to take it off him. I don't know. I don't really take much confidence from it, but I guess the win's a win and 3 points, and so I don't know. It keeps us in the playoffs, I guess.
So over these 4 games, who have you seen to be like the best player over the stretch? Do you reckon? I mean, Hernandez has got a couple of goals, or he's got a goal against Huddersfield. Diamande's got 2 goals. Aluko's looked a bit sharper, and Snodgrass has obviously had a bit of an influence in a couple of goals as well. So who's been your major winner over the stretch, Logan?
I honestly can't identify anybody as a major winner, but I think probably you just mentioned there, Aluko has been the one for me that is probably starting to offer the most promising signs, and probably Rob Snodgrass too.
And Mitch?
Yeah, I don't really know if I could pick one out, but if I had to, it'd be Snodgrass just because of his goals. I think that's what we've missed when we signed him, and he was injured straight away. So could have been helpful in the Premier League, but now that he's back and he's scoring, if he can keep doing it, then happy days.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think Snodgrass is one of the big winners from the stretch, but I also think in terms of earning a spot and confidence, I think Diamande's a big winner that he's starting to get back into the side, because there were a few games there where he wasn't even making the bench, so which would have been pretty demoralising for him. You know, he's just come over to a new country. He'd be eager to start games and show what he can do, and he's not even making the bench, so he'd be happy to be in the squad. In terms of losers or players who've performed worst over the stretch, it's hard to go past El Mohammadi, who has had a huge fall from grace from where he was over the first few seasons under Bruce, and it's almost since he got dropped against, I think it was Cardiff earlier in the season, right after he'd made that long streak of games over 100 consecutive starts. He got dropped for that Cardiff game, and he's kind of dropped his head since then, and he's really struggled for form. So who was your biggest loser, Mitch?
Yeah, possibly him. No one's been impressed with him all season, really, like compared to where he was, as you said. I don't think Davies. I guess he scored, but I don't know. I just get a bit nervous with him now. I know he went through that patch last season in the Premier League as well, where he was a bit shaky. I think it was at the start of the season, and he got better towards the end, and so I just hope he's not going into that shaky form again. And
Logan?
I think it's got to be Hernandez on his recent drought. I mean, I guess he has scored. He scored against 2 games ago. Who was that? Bristol. Bristol? No.
Huddersfield, yeah.
Huddersfield. Sorry, he scored against Huddersfield, but yeah, I think we've come to rely on Hernandez far too much, and his goal return in the last patch just hasn't been good enough. So I'm gonna unfairly target him.
No worries. And I guess we'll move on then. And there's a few talking points to discuss since the last podcast. And we'll start with discussing the formation, which we've already touched on a little bit, on whether we're better playing the 3-5-2 or the 4-4-2. Clearly, Logan, you're in support of the 3-5-2. Against Huddersfield, by all reports, we looked pretty shaky using it, but maybe put that down to either the players weren't used to playing in it after such a long time playing 4-4-2, and also Bruce bringing in Alex Bruce and also Maguire for centre-backs alongside Dawson, when he perhaps could have stuck with Davies to have a bit more continuity down there. So I'll start with you then, Mitch, on this. And do you think we're better at the 4-4-2 or the 3-5-2?
I think the 3-5-2 kind of relies a lot on our crossing ability, which is why it worked so well when El Mohammadi was in form. But now I'm not sure that Odubajo's got the same cross as Elmo does or did. So I don't. Who would we play on the right if it was 4-4-2? Soddy, right?
4-4-2, I think. Well, against Wolves we had Elmo on right mid and Odubajo right back, but obviously Elmo didn't look great, and Snoddy came on after about 60 minutes, I think. But he came on for Odubajo, and Elmo switched to right back. But it was interesting that early in the Huddersfield game, when we were playing 3-5-2, Elmo probably had his best stretch for the season, where he was putting in quite a few crosses for Hernandez and also Diame. So I wonder if the 3-5-2 probably suits Elmo more. It just depends on whether Bruce sees him as sort of a regular starter at this stage.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I don't know. I think it does revolve around him, and at the moment, just based on this season so far, I can't see him really breaking into that thing. So I think we'll go with a 4-4-2. I'm not really sure which I prefer, but I think that's what we'll end up keeping for the rest of the season, especially with Dawson out.
Yeah, well, I was just about to mention that to Logan. So with Dawson injured, do you think we'll stick with the 4-4-2? Because obviously, if we switch to the 3-5-2, we've kind of got no defensive cover.
Yeah, 100%. I think Bruce will continue with the 4-4-2. And if we did have Dawson fit, I would like to see the 3-5-2. Just to shake it up, try something that, I mean, we're obviously haven't been flourishing in goals recently. So, yeah, just to mix it up a little bit and see if it works, and then go back to the 4-4-2 if it's not. But definitely with Dawson injured, I think we're almost forced into keeping that 4-4-2 formation.
And I think on the Dawson injury, he's due back just before the playoffs, so he'd be quite a welcome boost, I suspect, just running into the playoff campaign. With a bit of rest behind him, he might prove the difference in a couple of those games. The next topic is in terms of where you guys see us finishing the season, and it might have been a bit more relevant before last night's games, in terms of whether we could make the automatic spots with Burnley and also Borough winning their games last night, and Brighton winning their game 5-0 at the same time as our game. Playoffs are pretty much assured, would you guys say? And in which case, are we basically locked into the playoffs at this stage? I'll start with Logan.
Yeah, we'll be playing playoffs, most certainly. I'm not obviously not happy about it, but I definitely think we'll be there, and I think we will finish fourth. I can't see anyone else jumping us in the next few games. Basically because our run-in should be easy, and also I think that we're about to turn the corner. The interview with Snodgrass, how he said the players actually had a bit of a meeting on their own terms, maybe suggests that there's a little bit more ownership getting taken by the players, and I think we'll probably hit a bit of steam and come charging into the playoffs. Fingers crossed.
That was actually really interesting. I hadn't heard that comment, but I think it was on the last podcast, and I said to you, I wondered whether the players at some point take it all into their own hands, and even if Bruce is sort of telling them to play in a certain cautious way or whatever his tactics may be, how much the players take into their own hands the tactics and say to themselves, no, you know what, we're going to kind of pin our ears back and actually take this game on. So it's interesting to hear that, and it'll be interesting to see how much of a response we see from the players. Mitch, where do you see us finishing off? Because I know you've been a bit vocal lately about still holding out hope for the top two. Is that now gone?
Yeah, I think it's gone. I went through the games the other day, as you know, we were talking about it. The only thing that we could possibly take out of it is that they have to play each other, that Borough play both Brighton and Burnley. Is that right?
Uh, yes, I think so. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that's right.
Borough
But
plays Burnley on the final day of the season. I think.
oh, that could be interesting title game. But
Yeah, it could be.
I just we're too far out of it now. And Burnley haven't lost for something like 113 days. And like we went through the records of Borough and Brighton, they've really lost over the past few months as well. So I can't see us getting them, but I can't see us dropping out either. With Sheffield having to play Derby and Cardiff having to play Derby as well, and then so yeah, I'm with Logan. I think we'll finish fourth.
It's quite interesting because it was only a few months ago that I remember Borough fans were sort of saying everyone was kind of sinking the boot into them about their poor form and how they were choking it. And they were saying, "Oh, but look, we're still top two, or we're still level on points with first." And everyone said, "Yeah, but that just shows how far you've fallen. Because look at the lead you had only a couple of weeks ago." And it's an indictment on us to some extent that, as you say, the other sides around us have barely lost in the last few months. And we can say, "Oh yeah, well, we're only 8 points behind them or something," but that just tells you if we're dropping so many points and we're still that close to them, relatively speaking, it just shows you how far ahead we were at one point to where we are now, which is a bit sad to see. But yeah, I think it's the playoffs for us, and we discussed last time. We've had a few good days out at Wembley, so hopefully we can have another one this season. The only thing I did want to still touch on with the playoffs is that our likely opponent is Derby, and obviously I think they've beaten us, is it 6-0 on aggregate this season, so some, something's obviously going to have to change against them. Is there anything either of you can kind of pinpoint with the way Derby plays, or anything that you suggest that we could perhaps do differently to knock them off?
We could defend. No, they,
That would help.
Yeah, I think Derby for me are probably the biggest underachievers in the top six. I probably expected them to take one of the automatic spots earlier on, and they a big club with a big stadium. They're going to be tough. In saying that, I actually don't think there is an easy opponent in the six or the three to six rather. So I'm not really too sure it's going to matter who we get pinned against. Every single one of those games, I wouldn't prefer any of the clubs more than another one. So, yeah, if it's Derby, it's Derby. I can't pinpoint anything particular that we could do against them, except more committed performances. I think we've been poor both times we've played them.
Well, the sad thing is, if assuming that Burnley and Borough finish top two, we haven't beaten Brighton, Derby, or Sheffield Wednesday at all this season. We've had a loss and a draw to Brighton. We've had 2 draws to Sheffield Wednesday, and obviously 2 losses to Derby. So, when you say that there's no easy teams left in those 3 to 6 spots, there's certainly reason to think that. Mitch, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, just you listen those 6 games there. That's pretty daunting, knowing we have to come up against them all. Yeah, I agree with Logan. I don't think I'd rather play any of them. I don't think we'll end up playing Derby though. I think we'll end up playing Sheffield. I think because they have to play Derby, and I think they'll beat them. And then I don't know what it sits on goal difference in their other games, but yeah, I don't know if we could pull out a performance against Derby, that would be nice. But yeah, I don't know. I think they've just got our number at the minute. Their midfield, I think. Who scored in the 2-0? He scored both.
That's a good question. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest.
Is it Butterfield or
Butterfield might have been, yeah.
Yeah, either way. But yeah, I think I'm just glad Ince hasn't scored, to be honest.
Oh, that'd be
yeah,
rough if
I'm
he
not sure what we can do, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose.
Moving on to off-field matters, and I did just want to touch on this quickly because it has come out in the last few days, the club's announcement about the membership scheme for next season. And I've got to say, initially I was quite positive about this because it seemed to me that they were adopting a similar model to what we see in Australia with sporting clubs, where you pay a certain fee each month, you get memorabilia, you get free access, so to speak, free access to all the home games, you get preference for away games and so on. It seems like a really good idea to sort of encourage participation and encourage bigger crowds at the games. But when the details came out, it looks like they're scrapping concession pricing, so everyone's going to pay a flat rate of, I think it's £21 a month for the cheapest zone, and then it incrementally goes up from there for the more expensive zones, which of course is a big hit for the elderly and also for kids. And I think the club's defence was that kids are going along with adults, so adults will be saving money. So overall, the net impact will be that the family is saving money. But of course, the issue then is if it's a dad taking his 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever it is, then that's not necessarily the case. And the other issue being that they're looking to close the West Stand. If we don't get promoted, it's going to be completely closed, in which case everyone sitting up there has to move, which for them, they see those as the best seats in the ground, so they don't necessarily want to move. And if we do get promoted, they'll only partially close it, so they'll still force some people to move. So there's been a lot of anger and a lot of outrage about this from the City fans, and the club actually, to their credit, said that they'd look at it and they'd assess what they could actually change about it to solve some of these issues. And they've come back and basically said that all families won't pay more than they paid this season, which answers some of the issues. But I think they're still looking to make people move out of the West Stand, which will still cause issues, and it'll still end up costing people a lot more money. And we've seen on social media a lot of people who've supported the club for 50, 60 years sort of saying, earn your stripes, which is the slogan of their campaign. They're saying, well, we've earned our stripes by going to matches for the last 50 or 60 years. And they're pretty upset with what's going on with the club and likely won't be renewing. So I don't know how much you guys have been keeping abreast of it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and then also what you think this will do to our crowds for next season. And I'll start with Logan.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a tricky one. Obviously, unless you're a ticket holder in the West End, it's very hard to comment on it and know the individual circumstances and whether you want particular seats or how much you want to pay, whatever it might be. But I think that the biggest thing for me is the problem that seems to kind of keep rearing its head is, like, what kind of questioning and process goes into place before these decisions get made. It almost seems like there's knee-jerk reactions, and the club decides one day that they're going to do something, and there's almost like a backlash, it seems, on a weekly basis. There just doesn't seem to be much consulting with the fans, and I think that for me is probably the most disappointing thing, whatever the new structure is, the fact that there seems to be a lot of disgruntled fans consistently, and that can't be a good thing for our on-field performances.
Yeah, and the worry for me as well is that one comment I saw was that, well, if we were, selling out 25,000 seats each week, and there was this huge demand for tickets that we couldn't sell because the stadium was full, absolutely, well, to some extent, you want to change things around, you want to move people around to better create a better atmosphere of the ground and so on. And if that then causes some people to be unable to afford it, then as much as that's a bad thing, you've still got that demand behind it to refill those seats. But we're only getting 15,000, 16,000 to the ground as it is. So to make it even dearer for people and more difficult for people to attend games, you're going to see crowds dip below 10,000 surely if we don't get promoted this season. Mitch, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've not read into it a whole lot, but yeah, as Logan said again, it's tough to know the circumstances behind it and the reasoning behind it. I'm not quite too sure. Like, obviously they want more money from it, but I think they need to weigh up the attendances and the I guess happiness of the crowd above the money thing, because the way it'll work out, they'll probably end up getting less money from it because attendances are going to be so low. So they've got to think about that and weigh that up before making these decisions. And yeah, as I said, I haven't read into it a lot, but it doesn't sound like many people are happy with it.
My understanding, one of the motives for scrapping the concessions is that there's been people cheating the system, basically claiming that they're an under 18 card holder and they're getting in on a cheaper fee. And apparently there's no stewards manning the ticket machine, so that's the issue. So I kind of wonder, surely it's better to employ people to man the ticket machines and actually ID people to make sure that they're actually using the cards properly, rather than the way they're going about it. But your point's a really good one, Logan, that there doesn't seem to be much consultation with the fans, because it would have seemed to make sense, which was one suggestion I saw, which was basically just you have the zones as it is, and then you say, okay, so kids under 12 pay, say, £6 a month or something, because I think at the moment kids under a certain age only pay about £30 for the season. So you say kids under 12 pay, say, £6 a month, kids between 12 and 21 pay X pounds a month, and so on, and do it that way. And and then you can still have the zones. You can still sort of create the atmosphere in the ways that you want to do it like that. But it still becomes a lot more affordable, and you actually fill the ground. And surely that actually ends up making the club more money. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one. So I think there's a lot weighing on promotion at this stage. I think the club's in a really precarious spot about what we could see happen next season if we don't go up.
Yeah, definitely.
On to more positive stuff now. We'll look into the previews for the remaining games for the season because we've only got 5 games left. So we're in the home straight now. And we've got Reading first up away from home. And unfortunately, Paul McShane won't be lining up against us because he's had a bit of a scuffle with a teammate against, I think it was Middlesbrough or whoever they played last time out. But McShane and one of his teammates got in a bit of a scuffle. He's been charged by the FA. And I think he's been suspended for the match. But Stephen Quinn, who's been looking quite good for Reading lately, will probably be lining up against us. So, Mitch, how do you see this one?
So I went through all the games, as you know, and this is the only one I don't have us getting 3 points from, purely because it's away from home. And although they're the only team we've come back to win against, I don't know. I just think our form lately isn't good enough to go to a team who's been okay, I suppose, and take all 3 points. So I've got us having a draw, but I don't know. It could go either way, to be honest.
How about you, Logan? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Reading are one of those tough teams that you sort of don't know what you're going to get with them. They've upset some big teams along the way, and I remember they had a flying start for the season too. Yeah, I've got the pickers for a draw here. I'm not willing to say that we will lose that game, but it's certainly not one that I'm very confident with.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that they had that really good start to the season, and they've surprised me a little bit because I thought they'd be going a little bit better than they are at the moment because they brought back in McDermott for, I think it's his 3rd spell at the club, and there was some ridiculous stat to how he finishes off seasons with Reading and basically has them flying for the remainder of seasons when he's manager there, and it's just not come on for them. They've got some decent players there. They've got McShane, who's their captain now, and as well as Stephen Quinn from us, and they've had a few other decent signings. So it's a bit surprising that they're not doing as well as they could have been doing, but it is one of those tricky away games where it seems as if any away game's tough for us, but a game against any half-decent opposition especially can be quite tricky. The only benefit I can see of these sorts of away games is that the teams kind of come to play against us, and as we touched on earlier, when teams set up defensively against us, it's quite tricky. So hopefully if Reading really goes for it, it can kind of give us a bit of space to manipulate and really get into the game and hopefully get a result, because we really need to be heading into the playoffs on with a bit of a full head of steam. So hopefully we can win that one. After Reading, we've got the big local derby, I should say, against Leeds at home. We obviously owe them for earlier in the season, where it was a pretty poor performance. I think it was a 2-1 loss in that one. I think Elmo got a consolation for that one. So there's a lot riding on this game in a lot of senses. So Logan, how do you see us performing in this one?
Yeah, certainly. This is a game we have to take 3 points from in many ways. Definitely, we owe them from the loss, the pie throwing game, I think it was. But yeah, certainly we should take 3 points. I'm not confident I'm not confident that Leeds are good enough to match it with us if we play how we can play. But if we turn up in the same way we did when we went to Ellen Road, it could be a very difficult afternoon.
How about you, Mitch?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Anything but 3 points here will be disappointing. Extremely disappointing. Just because it's Leeds, I just can't stand losing to Leeds, let alone at this time of the season when we need wins for confidence more than ever. So I think we can get the 3. I think we should. I guess they're better away from home than they are at home this season. So that's not too great, but I think we should still get there.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had that kind of spell mid-season under Evans where they started to look quite good and seemed to be getting quite a few decent results, but they've certainly dropped off lately. I think they had a 4-0 or a 4-1 loss to Huddersfield a few weeks ago, and they've sort of, I guess, given up for the season. They're not going to get relegated. They're not anywhere near the playoff spots, so they're sort of just coasting along. under Chileno, could you really say he's much better an owner than we've got? But they've got their share of kooky owners and kooky events going on at the club, I suppose, off the field with the managerial turnover that they seem to get. So hopefully, we really do need to get the 3 points in that one, I suspect. It's as much for the confidence boost as anything else. Brentford's the next game after that, and they're our delayed game from the Arsenal replay that we had a few weeks ago, which is, our game in hand is really one that we need to be getting the 3 points on the board to sort of keep closing the distance with the teams above us as much as separating us from the teams below us as well. Odebajo against his old club once again, and they gave us a bit of trouble in the game earlier in the season. I think we only got over them in the second half. So how do you see us going in this one, Mitch?
With all these 3 games we've previewed so far, it's a bit tough to say because they're all mid-table teams. They all don't really have a lot to fight for. They're not going to go down, but they're not really going to push the playoffs. So it depends what team they put out, and depends what style they come with, I suppose. But we did struggle first half. I think it was 0-0 in the first half against them earlier in the season. That's the day I had an exam, and I went in worried, thinking we weren't going to win, and I come out was it 2-0 or 3-0?
I think it was 2-0 in the end, but that was that stretch of games where we won about 3 or 4 games in a row. We beat Borough, we beat Ipswich, and we beat Birmingham, I think it was, and we won all those 4 games in a row, and we all of them to 0 as well. So we were looking quite good.
Yeah. So I think we need 3 points. I've got us winning 3 points, taking all 3. But I don't know. Against these teams with nothing to play for, they can come out and they can have nothing to offer, or they can come out with no weight on their shoulders to speak. So I don't know. It depends how they show up, I think.
And how do you see it, Logan?
Yeah, I don't rate Brentford too highly. I think that given a spirited performance, we should be able to see them off at the KC. But in saying that, I thought we were going to be too good for Forest and MK Dons and whoever else you add to the list. So, I mean, I'm hopeful. We should beat them, but it's, at the patch we're in, nothing's for certain.
Yeah, you mentioned Forest and MK Dons and so on. You'd hope that against these sort of mid-table sides that don't have a whole lot to play for, that we'd be able to get the results, but we seem to be struggling in those games as well for whatever reason. So, hopefully we can get the 3 points in this one. As we've said with the previous games, it's all about building some momentum to get into the playoffs. Bolton are already relegated. They're our final away game of the season, I believe. I think it is away from home. So it's one that we need to be piling on the goals, so to speak. I think we need to be getting some sort of goal-scoring confidence in this one, 2 games out from the finals, the playoff finals, that is. So how do you see this one, Logan?
Yeah, I actually watched Bolton and Borough last night, and it was quite an interesting game. Bolton looked like a very spirited side for probably 70 minutes, and certainly not the relegation side that they are. They really went with Borough for a long time. So I think this game will be a lot more difficult than it looks on paper. I'm quite concerned about it.
It reminds me a little bit of the Bristol City game, the season that we were promoted under Bruce, where I think we travelled to Bristol City and thought, well, they're already relegated. It should be a walk in the park, really. But because they'd already been relegated, they didn't have a whole lot to lose. So they could play without fear, and they really kind of took it to us. And I think it was a draw in that game. And it could be a similar sort of result in this one. Or as you say, it could be quite a dangerous one for us. How do you see it, Mitch?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I hope it's a game that we can pile on some goals. That's one way it could go, or it could go in a way that, as you said, they do come at us and they do have that freedom to play now because they are already down. So I am pretty nervous about that. Anything but 3 there will obviously be extremely disappointing. Anyone who doesn't take 3 from Bolton this season should be pretty disappointed.
And obviously Borough almost didn't, but they did get over the line in the end.
Yeah, with that late goal again. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see in the next coming weeks how our form goes leading up to that. That could decide it.
And the final game of the season, which is another tough one, to be honest, a deceptively tough one, is against Rotherham at home. And Rotherham under Warnock have actually been really impressive. I mean, when they appointed him, I didn't quite rate the appointment. He's had a few underwhelming tenures at clubs recently, at Palace most recently. But he's been really impressive for them, and he's gotten the best out of them, and they've really sort of transformed under him. So it's a bit of a danger game, to be honest. How do you see it, Mitch?
Yeah, well, under him, they've managed to climb on the drop zone. I think they're like nine or 10 points clear of the drop zone right now. So hopefully they're safe by the time it comes around, so they don't have that drive to stay up, I suppose. But yeah, well, they got us earlier in the season too, which I think they were they near the top of the table then? Was that them or was that Charlton?
Charlton, I think you're thinking of, yeah. No,
okay.
It was Rotherham and Rotherham and Preston, I think, got us back to back, and they were both struggling at the time.
Yeah, that's right. 2-0, wasn't it?
Yes, I think it was.
That could be wrong. So
I think it was one of them was 1-0, one of them was 2-0, I think, but I can't remember which was which.
Okay, but yeah, it could be again deceptively tough, as you say. But again, we need to take 3 points. We can't be dropping points against these lower teams, especially that being the last game of the season before playoffs.
Yeah, and so I'll ask you, Logan, in terms of personnel and formation and so on, obviously we'd kind of view this game as a dress rehearsal before the playoffs. So how would you want to see us lining up, assuming everyone's fit, except for maybe Dawson? How would you see us lining up against Rotherham?
I think, like we said before, we've got to stick with the 4-4-2. I'd still keep Hernandez and Diami up front. I think Diamande for me, he warrants a bench spot. Depending on how he scores in the next few games. If Diamande gets another few starts and he does seem to score a couple more, then I might change that. But I probably wouldn't change the formation too much because, like you said, that the Dawson injury is probably the only thing that would stop me changing it.
Fair enough. So hopefully we can get the wins in those games and can push into the playoffs with a bit of confidence and a bit of momentum. So hopefully the next time we record, we'll be heading into the playoffs with a bit of optimism. Do either of you have any closing thoughts?
Good luck. We'll need it. It's going to be a tricky next few weeks. But I think it's an imperative run of games. I think the difference between going into the playoffs with a bit of steam is going to make a huge difference. I think if we continue this inconsistent form, it's not really going to give the players or the fans much confidence for that very, very difficult playoff run coming up. But if we win a few, I think you might just see a bit of good fortune at Hull City.
And Mitch?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I don't think it matters where you really come in the playoffs. It depends on your form coming into them, I think. So we need to win as many of these last few games as we can, obviously. Go into it with a bit of form. Again, I'm not fussed where in the playoffs we finish, really. But if we can come into it with some wins and hopefully get some goals scored again, then I think we'll be able to do enough, and hopefully we're positive next time the next podcast comes around.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, boys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Hopefully, as we've said, that we can get a few more wins, and the next podcast's a very positive one as we head into the playoffs. So until then, come on City, and we'll see you next time. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.